All right, so I think we could go ahead and get started if everyone's ready. Okay, so welcome to ICA Plays On. This is the International Clarinet Association's first virtual event, and I, for one, am having an excellent time. I hope everyone who's watched some panels, or maybe this is your first panel, that you really enjoy it. This is a great way to stay connected during all of these times. And you are here for I scrolled down too quickly, Clarinet Continuations, Adult Enthusiasts, and New Horizons panel, where we'll be talking a lot about some great resources for people that are starting back on their clarinet journey, maybe after an extended pause, people that are beginning their clarinet journey for the first time. This is a place to have all of your questions, comments, and concerns addressed. So I'd like to thank all of the panelists today for joining us and sharing their knowledge and expertise. We can all give a round of applause wherever we are in the world. And I will let all of the panelists just introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Let's let Dr. Roy go first.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm located in Rochester, New York, where I've been retired from college teaching at the University of Potsdam at the Crane School of Music, where I taught for nearly 40 years. I've been retired for about 16 years, and in that time, I have been teaching with the Eastman Community Music School, and been teaching studio clarinet there, but also I've been about 13 years with the New Horizons program, primarily conducting clarinet choir for those 13 years, and then 8 years I was conducting the New Horizons band program.
I'll jump in and go next because Alan Roy was my clarinet teacher at Potsdam and actually the person who kind of made me into the clarinetist that I am today. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Roy, for helping me to be who I am. And I live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I play in the Allentown Symphony and teach at Lehigh University and Moravian College. And I haven't been teaching for the past year or playing because I had a traumatic brain injury of May of 2019. So I am on the journey to coming back to the clarinet after a long layoff. So I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more.
Fabulous. I'm Michelle Anderson. I'm a professional clarinetist in Vancouver, BC. I teach at our School of Music at the University of British Columbia. And really the thing I most enjoy doing, I think, is working with amateur adults. I have a company called Clarinet Mentors, which just helps produce videos and resources to help amateur adults play more easily. And I really love working with adults.
Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. I think to start off, can you give any general advice for someone that is either starting or restarting their clarinet career later in life?
Michelle, do you want to take that first one?
Sure, I'll jump in first. I've worked with a lot of people in both of those situations, either someone who decides to just start clarinet because they've always wanted to do it, and they might consider themselves older than the average starter, or people who played in high school, loved it, and then had a career for many years and came back. And to some extent, I think one of the biggest challenges I see with an adult learning is that we're very hard on ourselves. I think all musicians are guilty of, as we play, we're quick to criticize ourselves or hear our faults, but I find this is especially true with the adult community, and I think it's easy to have a lot of beliefs. Oh, I'm not very musical, or I can't do this, or I'm too old to do this, and I really challenge all of those beliefs. And in my experience, there's a skill that adults have that I've never seen even the most talented children have, and that is that you've already had some success in your life. You've already had experiences where you worked hard at something and you learned how to do it. So you have this perspective and patience of, if someone gives me the roadmap, here's the directions on what I need to do to learn a skill, I know I'll get there. And so I actually love working with adults who, if, especially if they have a teacher or a plan where they kind of know these are the steps, they have the patience to do it. And I've seen, 70, 80-year-old people start as total beginners, and within 2 years they sound like they've been playing for 10 years and they sound amazing. And that is due to their dedication. But anyone who's watching this who has judgments about themselves or their abilities, I would just say really challenge those, because I think that no matter what age we're at, there's a lot you can do. And clarinet's not Olympic diving. It is a physical sport, but most of us still have the physical capabilities to learn to do it really well. So that's my quick, it's mostly psychological. I'll pass it to the other wise panelists here for their comments.
Alan, do you want to talk about your perspective?
Sure. I agree with Michelle. I think there are a lot of that adults tend to immediately put up psychological roadblocks, and I think that it's important to try to break those down and just reduce everything that has to do with clarinet and clarinet playing to its simplest and most basic way to get at it. And I think the other thing is just get started. I hear a lot of people who are very interested in getting interested in our clarinet choir or our band program and say, oh no, everybody in the group is so good and I'm not good enough. And I think the great thing about clarinet is that there are so many entry places. I mean, bands have three parts, first, second, and third. There's also bass clarinet for those who might be interested in, really doing something very different. But the other thing that I did with band, and still do to a certain extent with clarinet choir, is to take parts and edit them so that they're, very, very manageable. And as soon as they get, the feeling that they can do something, and when they find out they can do something, they can contribute. And when they feel like they're contributing to the group, they're usually in.
That's such great advice. I haven't been teaching, as I mentioned, but I think that finding a teacher or a community or a resource or a group that you can play in, whether it is Michelle's Clarinet Mentors YouTube videos, or being in a New Horizons group, or finding a teacher. If you live someplace very rural, try to find somebody who teaches online. I know Jenny does, and I will be eventually, and kind of all of us are teaching online right now, right? Because of our pandemic going on. Michelle has some incredible resources on her YouTube channel, and you could basically, with her book and her YouTube videos, you could teach yourself the clarinet without a teacher, because she would be your teacher. But something else I have really appreciated when I have been working with adult students is to get them a resource that helps them to advance quickly. And that is something I love about for example, the George Waln book, elementary, where did I put it? I put it in my list. We have a list we'll be putting up. But anyway, the elementary clarinet method, because it takes you essentially from the very first notes all the way up into the altissimo register. And another resource that I was a part of was the Teaching Woodwinds. And this is a resource where you can learn all the woodwind instruments from a beginning to an intermediate level. And I'm sure the link will be shared. But there are videos for every instrument, from all the way from assembly all the way to playing into the highest registers of each of the woodwind instruments. So finding what works for you is what I think is really important.
And I just wanted to jump in here and say that Jessica and I, as people are mentioning any books or any resources like that, we are creating a resource list to send out after this panel is over. And Jessica is actually working right now. The three panelists put together quite a comprehensive list for anything that you want to know. So that should be online on our website in a few minutes. We're going to post the link in the chat below. So any of these books that they're recommending, we will talk about those, and you'll have somewhere to look at those and refer back to that later. The next question, you've mentioned a few resources, but maybe can you talk about resources or opportunities to play maybe before the coronavirus and maybe now, ways that you can connect with other clarinet players who are starting or restarting their journey? And this might be a good time to talk about New Horizons, what that is and why that's important.
Sure. Just a little. One of the most frequent questions that I get asked about New Horizons, what is it? And you know, where is it? How long has it been around? So just a little background information might be helpful. So this is a very brief postage stamp background on New Horizons. It started in 1991 in Rochester, New York here. Its founder is Roy Ernst, who is a professor emeritus from the Eastman School of Music. He was the head of the music education department there for many years. New Horizons was originally intended for a senior population, and the age limit, the eligibility, as it were, is age 50, and this was arbitrarily arrived at because that's the eligible age to join AARP. But that's a very, very loose eligibility. But the 1991, it started as a band program. And shortly after, it started with a band. And I might add, it started on the strength of a 4-line newspaper invitation. And Roy has said many times that he had low or no hope at all that it would succeed. But to his surprise, 56 people showed up. And that's how it started. Shortly thereafter, they added an orchestra to the program. Shortly after that, they added chamber groups. And then after that, they rounded out the program with a choral program, string orchestra, and jazz groups. And that's where the program is now, here. And there are over 350 people involved in our program. So it's pretty extensive. In 2021, New Horizons will be celebrating its 30th anniversary. And in that time between 1991 and now, there have been over 300 new chapters of New Horizons worldwide. So it's an international organization. It is totally inclusive, and it has multiple entry points. You can enter if you're a beginner, you can enter if you're intermediate or advanced. As opposed to a school program where the entry level is essentially at the elementary level. But New Horizons feels that everyone has the ability to develop musically. And so often we run into people who, you know, I can't carry a tune in a bucket, so, and nobody in our family has ever been involved in music, ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. And so we feel that everyone has the chance to, in their own way, develop musically. And New Horizons' motto is, your best is good enough. 80% of the New Horizons chapters are in North America or Canada, the other 20% being scattered throughout the world. I've always found this relative to clarinet, that almost every chapter, which would be roughly 300, all have bands. And if every band has approximately 10 clarinets, then the clarinet population of New Horizons is roughly 3,000 clarinet players. And we all think that that's very conservative, because our chapter has over 60 clarinet players in its total program, and some of the Canadian chapters have even more. They're just enormous chapters. And so there is a huge clarinet constituency. My clarinet choir here in Rochester went to Austin, Texas to perform at an ICA conference. And the first person from ICA that expressed an interest, he came up after our concert and he wanted to meet me and find out. And he asked, the first time he asked the question is, what is New Horizons? And I think Keith was about to become the next president. And anyway, he was very interested in New Horizons. And so there was very definitely a dialogue between him and myself. And since then, our clarinet choir has performed at 4 other ICA conferences. And then Mitchell Estrin, very recently, about a year and a half ago, contacted me about the possibility of creating an ICA New Horizons partnership. There were 2 international groups, and quite coincidentally, 80% of ICA members are in North America, or at least I think nearly that. Someone who knows the exact facts ought to correct me on that, but I've heard that mentioned, that a very high percentage of ICA members are in North America and Canada. And so it took us about a year, but we did manage to create a partnership between the 2 groups. And this all culminated into the first ever ICA New Horizons Conference Clarinet Choir, which would have been in Reno this summer, alas. But the good news is that it is already scheduled for 2021 in Fort Worth, and I have accepted the invitation to conduct that clarinet choir. So that pretty much brings us up to date, but I do want to mention one other person, and that's Caroline Harrie, who has been enormously supportive in this whole creation of an ICA New Horizons partnership.
That's really great. And for anyone interested that is not currently a member of the International Clarinet Association, Jessica shared a link somewhere earlier. We can reshare that. If you're interested, there is an ICA New Horizons membership rate for $25 for online only. So we'll put that back in the comments below. We also had a question. There is a composer here that is interested in possibly composing music for the New Horizons choir. How would one get in contact with that, or how would one make that happen?
I think there are a number of ways. Our group here has had a couple of pieces. We actually have done a couple of commissions. Larry Neek, who is now the conductor of the Rochester, one of the conductors of the Rochester group, has done a commission for our group. And my first suggestion would be to go to the website and locate a chapter that would be close to you, and see about some interest there. Another way would be to contact the NEMA people. NEMA is NHIMA, New Horizons International Music Association. They have an extensive website, and there's contact information for people on their on the international board. That would be my suggestion.
And feel free, any of the panelists at any time, if you have something to say, feel free to jump right in and say anything. And anyone watching, please share any resources, advice, or anything you want in the chat box. We want this to be as interactive as possible. I saw a question earlier. Let's see if I could scroll up to find it. It was something about they were teaching an adult student that couldn't cover the finger holes, if I remember correctly. Maybe you could address that and other issues that might be encountered with someone learning or restarting the clarinet later in life.
I would say, I think I noticed that question, and there was a comment about the plateau keys, and I don't know a lot about that, but I do know that messing with different possibilities for thumb and supporting the clarinet in different ways so that the fingers can reach is something that I would definitely recommend exploring. But I don't know, Michelle or Al, do you guys know about using a plateau clarinet?
I sure do.
Oh, tell us.
Because I play on one. I have rather advanced arthritis, very swollen joints, and my fingers are starting to become disfigured. I went to see John Weir, who's in Toronto. He's a good friend, and he's a master craftsman. And I explained my problem, and he built a plateaued key for me. And this was about 2 or 3 years ago. Worked out very, very well until both my hands started to just bloom with arthritis. And so 6 out of my 10 fingers have arthritis. And the worst 2 fingers you can possibly have relative to clarinet are your index fingers. And those are the worst fingers I have. So anyway, one of the women in the clarinet choir here had gone to a company in Copenhagen called Loaf and Pfeiffer. And they specialize in plateau system clarinets for any brand of clarinet. And so I only held her clarinet once, because very shortly after I saw her horn, she passed away. And I could never find her clarinet. Her family didn't know what happened to it. But anyway, long story short, I contacted Loaf and Pfeiffer, and I now, for the last 1.5 years, have been playing on a fully plateaued key system. And it's on my R13 88,000 series buffet. And I can play, pretty much 95% of what I used to play. So it's pretty fantastic.
And just maybe people listening who aren't sure what a plateau key system is, it basically covers the holes for you, so you just push them down, similar to what you would see on a saxophone or beginner model flutes.
Or
And or bass clarinet, absolutely. I've had a lot of students use that, and if you don't feel you need that full step, although that's a very good one, I agree with Debbie that there are some really innovative thumb rests that make our hand in a much more natural position to cover things. So I know people have been exploring the Kuhlman thumb rests, which have a whole different, all these different flexible ways to support your hand. I've also seen people with these finger rings, and if I were to describe it, it's a ring that goes around the first joint of your finger and the next joint, and it keeps your finger in the arch position that you want to have when you're playing clarinet. And for some people with arthritis, that's a really helpful tool as well. So there are some physical aids that can make it easier if you have problems with your hands.
And neck straps and other supports that way too.
I'm a huge fan of neck straps. When I started clarinet, it was considered very wimpy to use a neck strap, but I really think it saves wear and tear on our tendons and wrist. So I recommend them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. One other little thing about Loaf and Pfeiffer is that they can customize the plateauing of your horn. They can plateau any key or group of keys or keys that are peculiar to your situation. And the workmanship is very professional.
I see that we have gotten into some gear questions. I don't know how intensively we want to go into equipment, but this person is playing a Noble Model 40 that they got when they were 9 years old, 62 years ago. I've updated the mouthpiece and play Leger reeds. What difference in ease of playing, pitch, etc. could I expect in, for example, a Bakun Q series or Buffet R13 clarinet? I guess just in general, any equipment recommendations that you would have for people that are starting or relearning the clarinet later in life, maybe reeds that are easier to start on, mouthpieces you might recommend, anything equipment related.
You know, I'll jump in here because equipment is so personal, and I'm sure all of us on this panel are professional clarinetists. We all use different gear from each other. So there are many reputable brands, but for someone who is new to clarinet or coming back, I will say that the clarinet technology has improved a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. I think we're really fortunate. And the first thing I always recommend people upgrade is to a professional mouthpiece, because it makes such a difference to how easy it is to play, how good the results are, and it's also very personal. Everyone's mouth is shaped so differently. You're going to find a variety of things, and I'm sure each of us on the panel might recommend different things, but one thing that I'm finding really helpful, and it's controversial in the clarinet world, but I'll just toss it out there because I do recommend to my students, is I took the time to figure out how to make the Leger synthetic reeds work, and it was quite a learning curve, and I was quite opposed to it. But now I find I'm able to make the sound I want, and it saves me a lot of stress and hassle. And if you're interested in going down that route, Richard Hawkins has designed some beautiful mouthpieces that are designed to go with the Leger synthetic reeds, and they're called the Vocalese. And I find for a lot of amateur adults, that combination gives them a really good basic no fuss sound, and there'd be so many other great mouthpieces and reeds that I recommend, but if you have the opportunity to play test some mouthpieces, I think that makes a big difference. That's what I'll toss out there.
I can just second that. With this brain injury, I haven't been playing very much, and so the setup I used to use, I could not use Leger reeds on at all, but then I was able to get some of the Hawkins mouthpieces to try, and I found one that worked beautifully for me, and I've been playing Leger reeds since my injury essentially on this setup, and I can say it has been amazing for me.
I'm currently playing on the synthetic reeds as well, and I'm having a senior moment right now. The name of the reeds. What's that we were just talking about.
Legere?
Legere, thank you, thank you. Another person, I played on Hawkins mouthpieces too, and I think they're fantastic. But Walter Grabner has been working with Legere. They both, talk to each other a lot. They confer a lot. And I'm currently playing on a Walter Grabner B-flat mouthpiece, and it is dedicated to those reeds. And I'm also playing on one of his new bass clarinet mouthpieces for Legere reeds. And there is another option. And my attitude about mouthpieces is definitely try lots of mouthpieces before you make a decision.
Yeah, I always recommend that if you can go to a store near you and try out the different kinds of mouthpieces that they have in the store, at least that gives you a starting point if you can't make it to like a large distributor. And the same thing with clarinets. And then if you can, take a friend with you that is a musician to listen and to kind of give feedback, whether it's your teacher or a colleague from one of your groups. But and then the third thing I would say is always test your equipment with a tuner, but you're not looking at it, your friend is looking at it for you and kind of writing down what they notice as far as pitch and that kind of thing.
Jenny, I was just going to jump in earlier. You were asking about resources for people to play kind of pre-COVID and during COVID. And Al just talked a lot about the New Horizons bands. I have so many students that I teach who for years were too scared to play with anyone and always believed they just weren't good enough to play with any group. And someone, kidnapped them and brought them to a New Horizons group. And they just said, I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. And it's, they're so warm, they're so welcoming, and having that structure of a place to play is so great. So if you're just even in the back of your mind thinking, well, that's good for other people, but not me, I really do encourage you to check those out when they're back in action, which hopefully will be soon. And as far as how people can make music together now, obviously we're all struggling with that. We all miss playing with our colleagues, but I've been running some kind of online master classes, where we get 20 people on a Zoom call together, playing for each other and sharing knowledge, and it's been really fun. It's not the same, but if you belong to a community group, there's nothing to say you couldn't have a Zoom meeting just like we're doing now and kind of just play for each other and talk about what you're doing. Haven't seen any technology that really lets us play real time as a group online. Although people are working on it and there's forums out there, but I think even just to play for each other, and there's a lot of apps, that will let one person record part of a duet and then your friend records the other part on top of it, and they're creative workarounds. But I do think that playing music is rewarding, but it's also a very social thing, and I really encourage people to use something like Zoom and just stay in touch with your colleagues musically.
I have to jump in here. I have to give two shout outs. First to Michelle, because if anyone hasn't seen her YouTube channel and the large number of videos that you've created to help people of all ages and ability levels about anything you'd want to know. I put it in the chat earlier. I'm going to link it again. You should check out Michelle's videos on everything related to clarinet. And the second thing is, Michelle, you were talking about there's no technology that lets you play in real time together. That's technically true, but Marilyn Fleming, who is somewhere, she was here earlier, she introduced me to Jam Kazam, which is the closest thing we have where you can play together. And she wrote a blog post on that and a lot of tutorials, because it does take a little bit of work to set up all of the audio, and like the tech setup takes a little bit more time, but you actually can play together in real time. Granted, it's not a substitution for playing in the same room as someone else, but I'll see if I can find any of those links and share with everyone. So check out both of those resources. I think they're really wonderful. And any other resources, again, please feel free to share in the chat. Maybe now's the time too. I know that we shared the link of all of the resources, but maybe if you had to choose a couple to share with us now, your favorite books to use or methods or duos or anything at all like that.
I'll jump in. So in my teaching, I've taught adults online, and I have taught adults in person, and I've taught a lot of saxophonists how to play the clarinet and sound like a clarinet and not like a saxophone. And some of my favorite beginner resources are the Teaching Woodwinds book that I mentioned earlier, but also the George Wallen Elementary Clarinet Method, because it can take you from the very beginning all the way through. And then one of the other books that I really love, and actually I put it under advanced, but I think that it could work for anyone, is the Avram Galper Tone Technique and Staccato book. That is an incredible resource, and I love how clear it is and how well organized it is, so that you can do the Krebs exercises, but they are in 8th notes instead of 16th notes, so visually they're easier to read, and there's warm-ups, there's skills, there's tonguing, there's musicality, like there's everything in this book. And so those would be two that I use with almost every student regardless of age, because I think it's just a wonderful resource.
You know, I agree with everything Debbie just said, and you'll see our list that has lots of things we recommend. One resource a lot of people don't know about that I recommend for adults, there's a group here in Canada called the Royal Conservatory of Music, and there's similar groups around the world, but they have a bunch of music curated by your ability level, right from, you know, you only know a few notes up to you're one of the most advanced players. And within each level, they've taken some of the best solos that are out there, some of the best etudes that are out there, some of the scale books, and they've created resources for each of those grade levels. And it's on our PDF. But what's really nice is they all come, all of the solo repertoire. Let's say you've been playing for about 2 years, so we put you at the grade 2 level or so. They have not only the piano part, but a CD where you can play along and hear a clarinetist doing it, or just have the piano accompaniment to play along with. So especially now if you're working on your own, it's a really wonderful set of repertoire. And they're available all over the world. The link is on our PDF. So if you just want some fun music to play, there are scales and other things included, but it's also just some really nice repertoire. Oh, and we forgot, I just saw in the chat that Kristen Chambers is recommending her Facebook Etude of the Week group, which, my apologies, we forgot to put on our PDF. It's a wonderful resource for people who want to work on music together too. So shout out to that.
I actually think that we left the Royal Conservatory off, and I think we meant to put the Etude of the Week on there, and we did forget. But I just shared the adult.
Perfect. These are all really good. So many resources. Jessica and I will get these put in a list and have this available again after this is over. What other questions do people have? Don't be shy. We're seeing a lot of wonderful resources in the comments. Any questions that you have? I think we've talked about equipment, challenges, maybe other advice that you would give someone. I know a lot of this is psychological, to feel like you're worthy enough to join others playing. Maybe some ways that you can feel connected at home now, other ways that you can share music virtually. I realize we've talked about the Etude of the Week group, the YouTube videos. I've seen people do porch concerts, but anything that you care to share?
I've seen a lot of creative things come up, like this conference, you know, thanks to Jenny and Jessica for organizing this, that bring people together. And there are, you know, people who are doing online interviews. Richard Hawkins is interviewing a whole bunch of people, and Andy Simon is interviewing a bunch of people. So there are things like that. I would also say that there are so many great teachers who are now teaching online, and if you feel like you just want some lessons, I'm sure you can find a teacher that you like. I know a lot of teachers who are even doing group coaching, so you get a whole bunch of people together. I know Debbie's done that, I've done that, and I'm sure many, many people do that. I think, like anything, it's easier to do when we have an accountability structure. So if you can't go play with your band, at the very least find a practice buddy that you can play with. And it's just like training for a marathon. Most people, if they join a running club, they're much more likely to get to that point where they strap on their shoes when it's race time. So there are lots of great places where you can find, you know, groups to join, and I just encourage you to seek them out.
I just saw that Ed had a question about uncomfortable with the online teaching. So, Michelle, could you talk a little more about how your online teaching works and how it is like a safe space?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's different types of online teaching. There's a lot of teachers. I think anyone who teaches in any institution like a university, we were all asked to teach online one-on-one. And so whether it's Zoom or something else, you know, as far as other people watching, you can set up secure links between yourself. And I always record my lessons completely. And that's actually a really nice resource for my students to have after the fact. I know when I was in university, I used to bring my little handheld battery operated recorder to record my lessons because sometimes we don't absorb things in the moment. It's nice to come back to it. When it's a group setting, for example, I have 20 people who are all at the same level who have been doing like a 10-week set of coaching with me. And we have some guidelines that, you know, be positive, cheer each other on. But what I've found is we've actually created a group that's really positive. People cheer each other on, they get to know each other. Just like in real life, if you're in a master class, sometimes you learn more watching a teacher work with somebody else than with yourself. When we're on the spot, we're nervous, we're insecure, we're just focusing on, I can't believe I missed that F sharp. And we don't hear the teacher saying, here's this hand position that's really going to help you. But when we're watching somebody else, we all have so many of the same bad habits. We learn that way. So I'm not sure, Ed, exactly what your concerns are. If you want to list specifically, I can address them. But I think just like in a one-to-one in-person situation, if you're teaching, you have a role to create a supportive, safe space for your students. And it's the same whether we're in person or whether we're online. But it's to be encouraging, it's to, if it's a group, that you only allow people to be supportive of each other. And for the most part, I find clarinetists are a wonderful group of people. And I love the energy that I've found in the online groups that I've worked with. Yeah, and I don't know if you have specific concerns, Ed, I'm happy to address them.
Sounds like quality of sound. I don't know, Jessica, you want to mention your microphone?
Oh, sure. This is an Audio Technica AT 2020, and I can share the link in the chat. It is a cardioid mic, so it's actually used often for recording music. And paired with good Zoom settings, which we'll also share in the resource list, a video tutorial on how to actually set Zoom to appropriately record the clarinet sound, because one of the hardest things for me when I first started was the distorted and compressed sound of the clarinet, especially in the upper register. So you have a hard time hearing that. So the combination of this kind of microphone that is really good for quality of sound with the settings that are appropriate actually can help make the process a little bit easier, both for teacher and student. And it is a plug and play. So what that means is you plug it into the computer and the computer will recognize that it's there, and it doesn't have to have any additional settings. And you can just tweak the sound a little bit using a little dial on it. And it makes it much easier for both the player and for the teacher to know, you have this mic, we can troubleshoot. If you're familiar with what the settings are, a lot of times people will plug in a webcam like what I have here, and there's a microphone on the webcam, but it's awful. and it's going to pick it up, and no matter what you do with the settings, it's still going to distort the sound quite a bit because it's not made for that. So I will share the link for that, and Jenny and I will include the Zoom tutorial for the settings. But yeah, it's really kind of a mess, isn't it? You know, and we just sort of have to adapt. But here we are having this wonderful conversation with all of you people, and it's just the future. I mean, it's a happy circumstance in some ways because it forced our hand a little bit to be modernized, to adapt, and to be ready to include these things. But it also makes it easier for us to connect with you. So we're really excited about being able to share more in the coming weeks and months and years. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just saw a question from Ed about the essentials of a good warm-up routine. And so I'd love to talk about that a little bit because I'm just coming back to the clarinet after a year of not playing. I've been working on my warm-up routine. And so there's a couple elements that I think are really helpful. Long tones that work on tone and embouchure and air. And then I like to do finger motions one at a time. So conjunct finger motion, and then disjunct finger motion like arpeggios. and then chromatic finger motion, and then articulation. And those are the things that I do every day. Well, I was doing them every day, and I have taken a little break, but now I'm coming back again. So this will be day 2 of my warm-up comeback. And with my friend Marilyn, I wrote a book actually called The Chalumeau Register. And this is what I've been working out of, because for me, playing in the Chalumeau Register doesn't give me a horrible headache. And after a brain injury, that's something I just sort of keep coming upon. And so working in the Chalumeau Register very thoughtfully with that sort of structure is what has been helping me to recover and to get my skills back. I hope that answers your question, Ed.
I'm going to just pipe in with the book that Debbie's created, the Chalumeau. There's the one that Jessica's holding up, but also Debbie herself, with Marilyn Fleming's help, who we mentioned, has a book on Chalumeau exercises that a lot of people in my community have downloaded and really, really appreciated. So that's a book. I know it's on our resource list. But what Jessica said about Zoom sound is crucial. Knowing how to set the sound is great. And I'll throw in one more pointer. If you back away from your mic about 4 feet on a Zoom meeting, it usually makes a big difference when you're playing clarinet. So my students come forward when they're talking, they back up when they play. And we just have that little routine down. And I feel like I can hear them, not as well as in person, but enough to still make some meaningful interaction about the sound they're getting and recommendations.
Something I think about the question about being a little bit apprehensive about online learning, again, feel free to clarify in the comments, but I think a lot of it is just the tech requirements. We all had to learn very quickly what microphone, what webcam, what this, what that. So I know for me, I've had a little bit of a different experience. I've been teaching online since 2013, but upgrading equipment. So if anyone wants to talk about the equipment they use, general advice, I know YouTube has been my best friend the last several months. How do I do this? How do I do that? Google, how do I do this? So any resources that any of you want to share as we continue in this online world.
Well, as someone who is completely new to online teaching, and I've only been teaching online for about 3 months now, it has been quite an incredible struggle for me. I mean, all of the sound issues, the screen freezes, and I'm, I learned a great deal from Debbie and Michelle, and all of this discussion about equipment is just incredibly valuable. So I appreciate it.
Michelle or Al, do you guys have other thoughts about warm-ups for clarinet and things that you recommend?
Well, I'm a firm believer in warm-ups, and all the things that you mentioned, the long tones, the chromatic fingerings, the diatonic fingerings, the disjunct, all of the chords, and all of that. With my arthritis, I'm sort of living my clarinet life with the idea that if I'm going to do this, I can't ever stop, because I've seen other people that have arthritis, and they stop. And when they stop, it's so hard to get started again. And so my warm-up basically is designed to make sure every single day I use every single key on the clarinet during the course of my warm-up. And that includes all of the the ladder of side trill keys, and all of the foot keys and ring keys, and every key. Just use everything. but I think it's very, very important.
I'll jump in. I know that earlier today, you guys, as ICA Plays On, did have a whole session on warm-ups, and I loved so much of what you said. And Jenny, I agree with you as someone who resisted long tones and as a reformed long tonist, that's very helpful to us. So if anyone didn't watch that session, I'm sure the replay is up. I really recommend it because there were so many great recommendations. And I would just add, to take a step beyond warm-up, just to think about how we practice in general. You know, we all pick up clarinet because we want to play great music, and I think we have to make sure we're playing the music we love. But I also encourage my students to, before they dive into the repertoire they're working on, make sure they're doing something that's very intentionally improving their skill in an area that they want to improve. And it could be as simple as, for 1 week you have one main focus. It's like, I'm going to get my fingers faster in this key, or I'm going to get my tonguing faster. I'm really going to work on my embouchure so my tone's better on high notes. So there's so many things we could pick, but to be really intentional, because I think even back when I was in music school, there was someone in the practice room beside me, I think played like 5 hours a day, always the same thing, and they didn't really get better. You know, their muscle strength was great, but what I realized is there was no intention behind what they were doing. So they were reinforcing their good habits, but they were also reinforcing their bad habits. So when we practice, really key into something you want to change, and it can be a very short amount every day, but if we're really focused on that habit we want to change, that's what really makes us progress noticeably over time. So it's a little bit per week, but at the end of the year, that's 52 little bits, and we've improved a lot. So just to really think about your practice habits, I would encourage.
Here's another great question. I'm sorry, Debbie, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
The intentional aspect, and finding your own goals that work for you, and then focusing on improving those, and finding a way, whether it's connecting with other people or recording yourself, in order to sort of keep track of yourself. I've been recording my warm-ups on YouTube, and it's been really helpful to me.
So we'll link the YouTube videos for that. A question, I see a lot of good questions. I'm trying not to skip any. Any advice for stretching before to help arthritis or clicking or swelling in your fingers? So maybe pre-warm-up routines. And then also I saw some questions about increasing speed and technique, and anything you'd care to share on articulation. So maybe back to clarinet fundamentals.
Do you do any stretches, Al?
No, not really. Not consciously. But I, you know, try to do as many different kinds of scales to work on finger flexibility. I do a lot of expanding interval exercises to work on embouchure flexibility. My biggest problem is that my fingers actually work okay, but they're so swollen that they inadvertently chatter keys around. Like I chatter the throat G sharp key, I chatter the bottom trill key a lot, and this creates very annoying sort of rogue squeaks. So this is something that I have to, you know, keep my hands well away from the keys. Bass clarinet playing helps that enormously, because it's bigger, it's, you know, and it just helps stretch the fingers out. So I guess I do some finger stretching by virtue of playing a lot of bass clarinet. And that really helps my B flat clarinet playing.
Michelle, we had a comment about your classical fingers. Someone says they could see it in your background. Do you want to show that and maybe tell everyone about what that is?
Sure. This is a device that, in my imagination, I always wish someone would invent, and then somebody did invent it, which I was so delighted by. It's an Australian clarinetist who's designed this, and what this basically is a little plastic shield that is super easy to use. I don't have the rubber band set, but there's a rubber band that goes around the top of your clarinet and the middle, and then with magnets it sticks on there. And what this becomes is a way to check if your fingers are moving too far. So it's really well designed to keep them at the optimum height. And people who are wondering if they can play clarinet faster, for example, a lot of times it's how we use our fingers in bad habits that slow us down. And one of them is that we lift our fingers too much and we slap them. And this is a wonderful way to, as you're playing it, to just notice, you know, if you're moving too far, and it helps you to replace it with a much more gentle, smaller movement that helps us to go faster. And when I first got this, I admit, I thought, well, this will be good for my students. You know, maybe I'll try it. And I thought smugly, well, you know, I don't hit my fingers on it. I have great hand position. Then I forgot that I had it on, and I went to practice some repertoire I had, and I hit this really difficult spot, and my fingers started slamming into it, which reminded me that all of us, when we're concentrating and it's hard, that's when we bring the tension. So anyway, it's called Classical Fingers. I think it's designed by Phil Lambert, and it's classicalfingers.com. A really helpful tool if you're working on hand position.
That's great. We linked that along with a YouTube video. Something else that I thought I would mention, and feel free anyone to chime in on this, is also if you're facing any problems with a clarinet, to just make sure that your clarinet is in working order, especially if you're using a clarinet that's older, maybe it's been sitting in its case for a while. Sometimes the problems are not actually anything you're doing, but it could be the clarinet and it's not in its optimal working condition. So just make sure that your clarinet is up to date. This also goes along with playing on the best equipment for you. We've clarified earlier that there is no single best mouthpiece, best reed, best this, best that, the best for each person. So I'll throw that out there and let everyone else share their thoughts on that.
Oh, I totally agree. And I've had several students who have come to me and been very frustrated that they couldn't get over the break or something like that. And it's often there was like a pad that was leaking, and that was not their fault at all. And so having, you know, a technician near you or mailing your clarinet to a technician to have it looked over would be something I would absolutely do, especially if you're coming back to a clarinet maybe that you've owned for a long time.
You know, yesterday in one of the panels, I think it was Gregory Ajid was saying, someone was talking about, he was complaining about crossing the break, and what was it he said, that it's connecting the break, and it's all about the vocabulary that we choose.
Just
So
straight up called it the connection, not the break. It's the connection.
I love that.
Yeah.
that was it. So I think I'm going to start incorporating that. The vocabulary we use is very important.
Definitely, definitely.
Let's see, here's another question. Maybe we should have addressed this during the warm-up panel, but just like flutes practice whistle tones, what is your feeling on incorporating harmonics in your warm-up routine?
I personally like it. I think it's a good thing to do, and I think it very definitely helps to voice. I think the clarinet has four fairly well defined registers, and I think you know, coordinating throat and tongue and our air, I think is very, very important. And so doing harmonics, I think, is a really, really valuable thing to do on a pretty regular basis. And I like to do it with students that I've had that have very rigid brick-like embouchures, and there's just zero flexibility in their face. Another interesting thing about harmonics is their application to altissimo range on a bass clarinet. That there are traditional fingerings that work very, very well on bass, but also there are these harmonic, this sort of parade of harmonic fingerings for altissimo, and they're very handy. And they do take this harmonic-like voicing in order to make them work.
I think that was covered in the auxiliary clarinet session, right? And there was an amazing fingering chart that was shared as well.
Ooh, I'd like to see
Yes,
that.
the fingering chart is on the ICA website. Sarah Watts shared us her fingering chart, and that's all on ICA Plays On / I think clarinet.org/ICA Plays On 2020 on the website, and we can share the link in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm. I do.
So, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I use harmonic exercises, especially when my students are learning how to make the connection to the altissimo register. That's when I use them a lot.
Yes.
And also when they are like have the brick embouchure, like Al said.
I was just going to ask, what other practice advice do you have for everyone? Maybe this is a tough question. How long to practice? I don't want to open up any cans of worms here, but general practice guidelines, what else you should include in your practice routine, any repertoire, or just any general practice advice?
Nobody wants
Questions get tougher.
Do you
They
know,
only get harder from here.
for me, I think part of it depends on the musical path you're on. You know, I think for all of us, the only way we're going to play the music we love to play well is if we do master our clarinet fundamentals. And again, that means some intentionality. I had one teacher who suggested to me that about 1/3 of our practice time should be what we consider our warm-up period. And that is where we're not looking at the music we're playing, but we're just working on building good habits. So long tones, thinking about how I'm holding my fingers, thinking about what I'm doing with my embouchure, thinking about voicing, maybe articulation patterns. Then there's learning rhythm patterns so that we can sight read better. And there's learning finger patterns, so all the scales and arpeggios, and that, you know, at least 1/3 of our time we should devote to that. Then when we're playing the music that we like, I see so many people who will play a song for me and they'll play along and they'll play a wrong note and they'll go, oh, and they notice it and they back up a bar and they play the same wrong note again, and then they'll back up and play it the 3rd time and maybe or maybe not get it right. So when we're practicing, I also like us to notice if we make a mistake, to actually stop and just kind of work on that spot until we can replace that habit of the wrong note, you know, with a better habit of the right note. And we just have to make sure, even when we're playing the music we love, that some of the time we create exercises out of that music to get that interval smoother or that fingering better. And then I always have some time where I just play for fun. I'll put on a recording of one of my favorite clarinetists and I'll play along with them and pretend like I'm that person playing with an amazing orchestra, and just have fun. So I think we need all of those things.
I'm going to jump in here really quickly. Something that maybe I should be more embarrassed to admit this is I recently started playing along with YouTube videos, which I'm late to this game, but I didn't realize until earlier this semester that you can change the YouTube playback speed. So if you're working on a piece and it's just a little bit too fast, you can slow down or speed up YouTube video. So that was life-changing for me. So playing along with recordings is great, especially if they're not too fast.
Absolutely.
There's also a couple YouTube channels that a pianist just generously recorded all of this major repertoire. One of my favorites is the channel Color is the Piano, and it's one of the faculty pianists at OSU, and and some of them are even in Brahms, several movements of the Brahms sonatas, just in different speeds so that you can get used to that. There's the Lutoslawski Dance Preludes, which, you know, is a really challenging piece to put together because of the way that the nomenclature is written without time signatures, or the time signatures are different between the clarinet and the piano. So he just recorded the piano part. So if you're looking and you're lonely and or just want to practice a piece, I just played some of Brahms the other day just because it lifted my spirits. So I'll share that link as well. And there are others. Feel free to share those in the chat as well.
I wanted to jump in and just back up to the harmonics because somebody had a question about how they work and how to practice them. So I have this quick and dirty way that I have my students do it that I want to show you guys. And like, let's just make sure that my clarinet does not sound horrible. Did I break anybody's eardrums? Okay. All right. So my favorite way to learn how to play harmonics for the first time is to play a clarion B, which is the one in the middle of the staff. And then I actually plug, you're gonna have to see it this way. I plug the end of the bell up on my calf. And then if I blow, it's gonna have this bizarre squeaking sound. And I can do all kinds of things, but if I move my lip down, let's see, just a little bit on the reed, I can get higher and higher notes to come out. They're squeaks, but that's the point. So if I plug the end up with my calf, and so you can play all kinds of silly things, but those are, for me, the first way that I introduce harmonics because it's a closed system and then you have to move your embouchure in order to make those happen. Then later on, I'll teach voicing with the throat and that kind of thing. But this is just like a quick and dirty way to figure out what harmonics are and how to find them. Hope this helps.
Any other tech advice? I see we're sort of back on the tech train in the comments. So how to do this, how to do that. Any other YouTube channels, online resources that you would recommend? I know earlier we talked about becoming involved in the clarinet community. I know for me personally, that's helped a lot to stay motivated and stay inspired, is just reaching out to all of my clarinet friends, doing events like this one. And earlier, Michelle had Clarinet Connections. And there's a lot of wonderful opportunities to stay connected with everyone. But I think that's so important in general, but especially these days. So any other resources that anyone, including attendees, want to share?
And someone asked if I could share the Opperman. I actually posted on the website just now, and I'll type the link in the chat, a variation, sort of like an explanation of what that exercise does. It's from a Midwest clinic a couple years ago, and it just sort of breaks down what voicing is and what you're doing here and sort of in the back where you can't see. So I posted that link on the website. That's really kind of an interesting breakdown and shows you different ways you can approach it. But obviously, many of us remember if you studied band in middle school, one of the first things that we do when we learn the register key is, play a low E and hit the register key, play a low F, hit the register key. And there are some little songs in the beginning band books that sort of approach that. That's the same thing. You're doing the same thing. You're learning voicing because you have to learn that when you hit the register key, the tube gets a lot shorter and the sound is going to sound different. And so after a while, you'll just, your ears will adjust to hearing the sound and feeling the resistance change. And that's sort of what voicing gets at the heart of that, right?
Feel free to chime in.
What about, like as far as the playback stuff?
Yeah, just anything, any resources, any general things you would like to share. I'm trying to look at all the questions. We have a lot of fundamental questions. I think we've already talked about some warm-up techniques.
We had a question about articulation, and I would love to hear slower tongues, obviously, like some information on how is the best way to approach speeding up your tongue and making the tongue more clear, working for clarity and shortness on that.
I'll jump into that one because I was taught an exercise that I'm sure many of us have been taught that really helped me with tonguing speed, and I can do the quick version of it. I think that for those of you who haven't experimented with stop tonguing, which is a type of staccato where our tongue not only hits the reed to start it, we come back and close off the note. If we focus as an exaggerated exercise, not that we'd necessarily play this way, on trying to create the shortest possible note. What happens is our tongue starts the note, it comes off the reed, and then it comes back super quickly. As a bonus side effect, it really helps us to increase the speed of our single tonguing. And when I was learning, I had a very traditional teacher who didn't like double tonguing and said, you just have to learn to single tongue like really, really fast. You just have to do it. So I was like, okay, I guess I do. And it really helped me get faster. So you can start on an open G, and first of all, just tongue normally. So this is my tongue just kind of going, you know. Then you practice closing off the reed by thinking of it's on the reed half the time, off the reed, and we blow the whole time. So for this exercise, you might get air leaking out. Then we try and make that process as short as we can, very, very pecky short notes. And we think about our tongue barely moving, and that doesn't sound great by itself, but if we keep blowing the whole time, it's training us to separate our air from our fingers. A lot of times people get slowed down because their air is going ta, 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 and we just can't huff as fast as our tongue can move. So once we get it really short, then we can try something like a long note, 4 short notes. Maybe with the metronome going, and we see what's our fastest comfortable speed. And the next day we try and go a little faster, and the next day a little faster. But I find if we're really doing it shortly, then we can start to speed it up. You know, it starts to develop the ability. Our tongue is the most flexible muscle in our body, so we can go much faster. But I think if we focus on shortness rather than speed, the speed will come. That's my mini version of something that usually takes about half an hour to do well.
Steve asked if I would show the hand position for the right hand and the left hand really quick. So if you guys are good with that, I'll show that. This is going to be tricky because I don't have my good camera on. But my right hand, the way I think about it is that I want to be like I'm shaking somebody's hand. So I'm not turning my wrist inward, and I'm not turning it this way. But my thumb is facing forward, and I'm shaking somebody's hand. Now, I then take the knuckle, this part, not my thumbnail, but my knuckle, and I put it under the thumb rest. And what that does is it brings my index finger knuckle a little lower under my clarinet. It kind of makes a straight line. And this is something I learned from El Silverdare. And I think of the side of my nail pushing against the wood of the clarinet and the knuckle pulling up against the thumb rest. And this is the best I can do to show you, but it looks like that, and it allows my fingers to have that curve that Michelle mentioned earlier. And by pushing out a little bit with the side of my thumb and pulling up with my knuckle and anchoring it behind the mouthpiece behind my top teeth, that releases my right hand a little bit and allows my fingers to move. Often we try to grab our cell phone like this, and you can see that I'm actually pressing the pad of my thumb against the phone. And when I do that on the clarinet, my fingers are automatically too straight and really clunky and slow. And I can't get around the pinky keys and that kind of stuff. So by working on bringing my wrist down and allowing my knuckle of my thumb to hold the thumb rest, that is something that I teach all of my students. That's the quickest I could ever explain it. I don't know if it was helpful, but hopefully it got you on the right track.
And so I see someone asked earlier about articulation and intonation books. Feel free for anyone to chime in, but we also discussed those at length. We had a weekend warm-up panel this morning, so we spent about an hour and a half talking about every book you would want to know. But if anyone wants to share their favorites, I think we mentioned Kell was our favorite, one of our favorites. So if anyone has anything different they would recommend, feel free. And also, I hate to wrap this up, but any final questions, now's a chance for people to type them in. But I guess in closing, just any final advice you would like to share for people watching today that maybe they could do today to help them out to continue their journey, to start their journey. Maybe there's someone watching this that's been thinking, I should play clarinet, I should get my clarinet back out of its case. But any final words of wisdom?
I, I, one thing I think is that if you don't have a warm up, develop one. And you know the tone, technique, and tongue should be, you know, obviously the primary components. Um, and I think that one of the problems is that because of the virus, a lot of our large ensembles have been sort of pulled out from under us, at least for the time being. And I do have a comment on that, maybe for later, if there's time. But I think one thing that's really helped me is to establish a goal. Because one thing we all seem to have a lot more of lately is time. And so I've decided that I'm going to much more intensively study the bass clarinet. And so I've decided that I'm going to, in this next year, learn the Kovacs homages on bass clarinet. No chance at all, of course, in making his unbelievable tempos. But again, if I can actually do them at a you know, at a reasonable tempo, then I'll consider that a good accomplishment. And I think we all can create personal goals that will enhance our playing and continue to keep us going forward.
I have all of my students set goals every semester. Since I mostly teach college kids, that's sort of how it works. And I have them make sure that they write them down and that they're specific and that they look at the big picture and the small picture. So what kinds of things do they want to improve specifically, but then what kinds of pieces they want to play as well. So I think somebody asked a question earlier about how much practice for each thing. And I like that idea of a third warm up, a third sort of technique practice, whether it's the pieces of music you're playing or etudes, and then a third of really just playing things that you love. I love that idea. And right now my practice is about 15 to 20 minutes because that's all that I can do. But I take breaks in the inside of that 20 minutes, and I allow myself to play something fun at the end so that I'm always having something to look forward to after my warm up.
I love how eloquent both of you are in what you said, and I agree with the goals and the focus. And someone asked if there's a practice journal. I have a practice form I have my students fill out where I just have recommendations for, they fill in what's my goal for today, what's this and that. So some form like that. There's lots of great resources out there. But I also think if you're someone whose clarinet's been sitting in the closet for years, yes, pull it out, do it, make sure it works. But that you'd be amazed at how much our brain remembers of those former skills. You need to have a teacher that's making sure you're developing the good habits, you know, when you come back to it. But I've seen people after 3 months who hadn't played for 30, 40 years find that they're able to play really, really well. So it comes back quickly once you rebuild the muscle endurance. So do it. It's fun. You're not going to regret pulling it out of the closet.
And find a community, even online, not online, find a community. Michelle has amazing sense of community in her group at Clarinet Mentors.
And I just want to especially thank Alan for pushing the ICA to encourage us to include the New Horizons members, because it was a neglected area. And of course, we're really grateful for that. And we hope that next summer we will have a beautiful festival in Fort Worth, Texas. If you want information, obviously go to clarinet.org. But when you do register for the conference, you just check the box that says, I want to participate in the Adult Enthusiast or New Horizons panel, in the choir. We would love to have you participate in that. Let's make it even bigger than Knoxville. I think that's possible. We also have panels for young students. If you come along with a grandchild or, a child or just a friend who maybe plays a little bit more, we have a collegiate panel, or I keep saying panel because that's all we're doing these days, right? Collegiate choir. We have just a festival choir where all different great ability levels can join together, and we hope that you'll join us at Clarinet Fest. And if you're a New Horizons member, you can get an associate membership to the ICA online for $25. We're going to start doing scholarships for people who are in need and just want to be a part of the ICA. So please share your feedback with us. We want to include more people into the clarinet community because this is a wonderful thing. Clarinet's a wonderful instrument. We're all here because we love it, right?
Absolutely.
So if you missed part of the panel, this will be on Facebook and will also be on YouTube later next week when I finally get all the videos edited. We're going to have a couple more panels today to wrap things up. Jenny, you want to tell us about those?
Yeah, and before we do, I think I failed to mention two things. We have a virtual exhibit hall, so if anyone wants to tour the exhibit hall, Jessica can put a link in the chat box, and you could sort of shop around. There's different companies and websites and vendors and all the cool products that people were going to share at Clarinet Fest if it were happening in person. So Jessica just shared a link for that. I also forgot to mention, you probably noticed my cool ICA mug. There is a shop on Threadless. It's clarinet.threadless.com. I'm sure Jessica will probably beat me to it, posting it in the chat. But we also have t-shirts. Someone got a beach towel yesterday, made me super jealous. But any kind of products really with the logo on it. So those are the two things I wanted to mention. And the other two panels that we have today, there's one that will start in about 40 minutes. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Clarinet and COVID, teaching in the time of COVID-19, where we'll also be discussing health and wellness in the arts during the time of COVID-19. So come prepared with any questions that you have. We have some real experts on the subject that are going to share some studies that have been done and more information. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, there is a panel called Creating Clarinet Content Online, where Michelle will be back to talk about Clarinet mentors and more of what she does with that and her community online. I'll also be participating on that along with some other great panelists. So we hope you'll join us. And like Jessica said, if you can't join them now, they will be on our Facebook page. We're creating a list to put up on the website that should be available sometime next week. We're going to try and get that to you as soon as possible because I think we're all pretty excited about everything that we've been talking and discussing. I know I've been writing down a lot of new resources.
We're going to sleep for an entire day probably before then, but
we will,
we'll get it
yeah.
to you eventually.
I think Jessica and I, we were texting. I think we went to bed at like 8 p.m. or something last night.
I didn't go to bed till almost midnight, but
Okay, well, I went to bed earlier than that, so. Yes, but we will get this to you as soon as possible because I know everyone's really excited. We're super excited for all of these great panelists that are here. And thank you so much for everyone for sharing your knowledge and expertise and wisdom. Let's give a virtual round of applause for these incredible panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you in about 40 minutes.
See you soon for the next panel.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.